We will start off with the serious news that the Archbishop of Canterbury has resigned. It follows days of pressure for Justin Welby to step down over his handling of an abuse scandal. We're going to open up the phone line straight away. We're asking if you've lost faith in the church over this, or do you say, no, he's acted quickly, he's gone, that's it. There was a damning report which found that Justin Welby failed to alert authorities to the abuse of children and young men by a barrister called John Smyth, who's thought to have been the most prolific serial abuser to be associated with the Church of England. Across 5 decades, he's said to have physically, sexually and psychologically abused 130 boys and young men. When he was beginning to be found out in the UK, he moved to Africa and started up in Zimbabwe. It's a horrible story. He groomed boys at his Christian summer camps in the 70s and 80s. And a report last week said Mr Welby could and should have alerted the authorities when he first became aware of the details in 2013. In a statement yesterday, Justin Welby admitted he feels shame and he takes personal and institutional responsibility for what happened. Is that the end of it, Harriet, do you think?
No, I think we're in a process of, this is a real moment of reckoning now for the Church of England. But I think first and foremost, we've got to think about the victims of, I don't know why we call it abuse, because what it is violent physical crime. It's assault. And if the idea was you're a young person, or, or a teenage boy, a child or a teenage boy, and you are violently assaulted and you tell people, but nothing's done about it, and then you see that those people, rise up the ranks and then come to lead the organisation, how does that make you feel? And I think there's lifelong consequences for the abuse. And it's really a moment for the Church of England, who's been trying to make some progress already, to really come to terms with the victims and what has happened and make massive changes. And we saw what happened with the Catholic Church. It was, utterly changed by the fact that it didn't recognise or respond to what had been going on in the Catholic Church. And now that moment has come for the Church of England. And the trouble is, in a very hierarchical and powerful organisation, then people can take advantage of it. And unless other people crack down on these criminals, those who are in a position to do it, the crimes go unchecked. And so I think he's done the right thing. He had made some progress already, but there's more that needs to be made. And I think there'll be more people resigning as well.
Bishops. There might well be more bishops resigning. And going back to Smyth, stuff was known about him in certainly the last 5 years of his life, but sadly he died in 2017 in South Africa. And the last person to confront him was heroically a Channel 4 news reporter who was chasing him around. But the authorities never got to him, Carole. That's the upsetting thing here.
Welby must take responsibility for that. He knew, the Macon report makes it clear that not only did he, because Welby says that he knew about it in 2013, but the Macon report commissioned to look into this by the Church of England said it's almost inconceivable that he didn't know many, many years before, as far back as 1981, when reports were circulating about Smyth. I got cross reading this today because, he said, the Archbishop said he takes clear and personal and institutional responsibility for this. No, he didn't, because 3 days ago, he was still saying he wasn't going to go. He said he'd taken advice on this, and on reflection, he had thought, no, I won't go. They're outrageous, and the reason he's gone now is not because he's taken the gracious way out. No, he has not. He's been pushed out. He saw the King yesterday. The King is the only person in England who can take the job away from him, and I suspect Charles said, you resign or I will have no choice.
No, you think so?
Well, I know that Charles is the only person who was able to take this job away from him.
It's just no one can survive that level of media.
Of course they can't. You used the phrase before. This guy was one of the most... The guy, Smyth, was one of the most prolific sexual abusers. Jeremy, he beat these boys so badly that they bled. Some of them had to wear nappies for days after a beating from Smyth. And this was circulating around the church. So apart from the physical scars borne by these boys, they bear mental scars. You never get over that. And in 2013, when he knew about it, any decent human being who came into possession of that knowledge, a file about a paedophile, would hand that to the police. Now, why didn't?
Let's get a perspective from a former vicar who's a friend of the show, Reverend Graham Taylor. Graham, I know you don't think for a second that Welby should have stayed.
Definitely not. I think Welby knew about this long before 2013. I do know one of Smyth's victims, and I think from what he has said, that church authorities were aware quite early on, and it's typical of the church. I experienced things myself when I was a priest that they would like to save public face rather than get to the truth.
It seems that the key moment in the story of Smyth is where he realised he couldn't abuse anyone in Britain anymore, and he was sort of allowed to leave and set up in Zimbabwe, with God knows how many victims there, Graham, with the church conniving with it.
Well, I suspect that at a very high level, they might have said, look, I think it's time for you to leave and to go away and to become very, very quiet. Child sex abuse within the church is something that they get very ashamed of. Instead of bringing it to the fore and saying, right, we have a problem, let's root it out right now, they tend to hide things. And this is the sort of the default setting of the Church of England. And it's a really sad day for the church. I suffered at the hands of the church when I was a priest. I became seriously ill with a heart condition, and they had me out within weeks. It was a choice between either paying me one amount if I died in service or a lesser amount if I died when I'd retired. And they had the retirement papers on my desk. I had no backup whatsoever, no conciliation. My wife at the time said to the bishop, would you mind praying for Graham before you leave? And he looked at his watch. He says, I don't have time. Wow. That's the Church of England.
Wow. Well, do you think it can ever reform itself or recover, Graham? Or does it have to be sort of stopped and started again?
Right, this is a church, and I have this from a high-ranking bishop within the church that was considering Paula Venables as the Archbishop of York. That is how stinking this church can be. Because Venables was an influence on Welby, she was considered. It's not public knowledge that. And we're talking about a man who closed 3,000 churches and yet wanted to give £100 million away in reparations. The church will shoot itself in the foot again. They will appoint somebody who's completely woke, who is completely diverse, and it's not what the congregations want. They want solid, good, caring, loving leadership. And one thing the church needs to do is start looking after its clergy, because they just cut us adrift. I've not been to church in years, Jeremy, and I love my God now, and I lost my faith for several years over what the church did to me. They're not a caring organisation, and there'll be many priests who'll ring in to say just the same.
Well, Graham, thank you. Just before you come in, Carole, let's just go to Sharon in Lincolnshire. That was amazing listening to that. Graham used to be a vicar.
He does, doesn't he? Well, good morning, everybody. I was really listening to him, and it made me realise I have lost my faith in the church. I want a place where I can go and worship my God and trust the people that I am with and am around in the church. I can't trust these people anymore. And I think it's very, very disgusting how wealth and people in the religious circle can protect people that are so perverted and really quite poorly. Yeah. They shouldn't be anywhere near children, and they shouldn't be protecting the people that are doing this to children or to women or to anybody.
Okay, Sharon,
I think it's disgraceful.
Thank you so much. Really, really strong words. Harriet, I mean, I suppose the only defence of the church, given that no one else has made it yet, is that we've seen it in the BBC, we've seen it in the health service with the shipmen. Good people can't see bad people. That's the problem.
Hierarchies defend themselves and they defend the power structure. If you look at that report, there's also that this guy, John Smyth, was running a Christian club for boys at Winchester School, which is a private school near where he lived. And clearly the school got wind of this, as everybody did, because it's one of those things everybody knew. And they then stopped their boys going there, but there doesn't seem to have... So they took action to protect their school and the boys in their school, but they didn't take any action to stop him carrying on being a prolific, violent offender. Yeah. And it's really about what responsibility you have if you're in a senior position, not just to tick the box of getting somebody else to do something, but actually following it up. And the more powerful the hierarchy is, the more responsibility there is on it. I think they've got a big way to go on this.
More on this after the break. Lots of calls coming in. We're asking, have you lost faith in the Church of England after the Archbishop of Canterbury resigned over the child abuse scandal? Return, though, to the news that the Archbishop of Canterbury has resigned over his failings in an abuse scandal. And we're asking, have you lost faith in the Church of England? We heard those very powerful words from Graham Taylor, Carole, didn't we?
Yeah, I haven't lost my faith in the church, because unlike Graham, I don't think it is a sad day. I think it's a good day, because I think what we saw this week was the hierarchy of the Church of England with the synod. We saw vicars who are naturally cautious people taking to Twitter and saying Welby resign. They want this sorted out. They want the church cleaned out. And to me, that's a positive sign. But it's interesting. And I also think that it shouldn't just be Welby who takes the can for this, carries the can for this, because there are other people who did what he did, and there are other people who did more. And we should
some are retired. Do you defrock them or what?
Well, you know what? There was talk today, should Welby get a life period? No, he shouldn't. He really should.
Well, he would automatically, wouldn't he?
No, it's not automatic.
Would you block it, Harriet?
It's not automatic.
Is it not? No. Well, he's in the House of Lords now. That's the thing.
It's not automatic.
Ooh, tricky that, Harriet.
Well, I think the whole thing about the bishops in the House of Lords is very odd, because they're in the House of Lords holding the government to account and scrutinising legislation by virtue of being ordination.
Yes.
So I think subcontracting the access to our legislature to the church, especially when it's just the Church of England, it's not Catholics, it's not Muslims, it's not Jews, it's not even the Church of Scotland. I think it is quite anomalous, but that's another
the
story.
Lord Spiritual, they're called. Virginia in Lincolnshire, looking at the Church of England, are you starting to lose faith?
Absolutely not. I think what the two female people that you've got there with
Carole
you
and Harriet,
have both said exactly how I feel. I believe in God. I trust in God. I've had incidents where we had a teacher once, and he was doing things in the classroom totally inappropriate. Left the city council social worker was in that school and was at the head teacher and dealt with it, and I felt completely protected. Unfortunately, the church is not doing this, and for all the people who have been affected, that's horrendous and dreadful. And we have got to look after the children. We've got to do better. And the church has got to lead in that. But they're people. They're individuals. He's made a mistake. I don't think he's a particularly bad, evil person. I think that he's a very busy person. And on this, it should have been top of his list. And immediately he found out this should have been dealt with, not leaving.
Virginia, you say he's a very busy person. That in no way excuses ignoring the wholesale abuse of young boys. In 2013, when this became public, he said he wanted to meet the victims and counsel them. He didn't meet those victims till 2017. Now, what does that tell you? He doesn't care very much about them, because he would have met them much earlier if he had.
Maybe he realised he messed up. Maybe he realised that this trail was going to, in the end,
he
topple
has
him.
Admitted he should have met them earlier. Yeah. He's actually said that.
Thanks, Virginia. Thank you,
It
Roy.
wasn't a priority.
Roy in Warwickshire, hi. No, Roy's gone. Grace in London, hi.
Hi. In the New Testament, Jesus gets blooming annoyed with various churches. There's a part of the New Testament where he's talking to churches and saying, you're doing this completely wrong and you're all messed up here. And in the Gospels, where Jesus is walking around in what is now Israel, he often argues profusely with some of the religious authorities. And he is aware that some people are in positions of religious authority and aren't actually committed to following God. He knows that in their hearts, some of them are just there for the power. So in my mind, there's a real distinction between Jesus himself and religious institutions.
Yeah, okay, good. So that's a very good point. So none of this needs to affect anyone's belief in God, let's say, but are we starting to think it's possible to have a faith without having any church?
I think that it's really, really good to go to a church because I think that you can learn a lot from other people there. You can often, though not always, but often hear really good teaching about the Bible and interact with people. And then also a lot of churches are doing fantastic things in our country. Growing up, going to church, I really benefited from a lot of the activities that were there. It's a shame that we just hear about the terrible, rare instances in the news. But ultimately, one's relationship is with Jesus, who died for us. And we're doing a lot of finger pointing at Welby today, and what he has done is unacceptable and awful. But I am very conscious hearing it that I myself have not the same, but other flaws, other sins. And I am so grateful to Jesus for the forgiveness that he offers, because all of us, though not in the same way, have messed up.
Okay, thank you, Grace. Roy in Lincolnshire. I think Roy's back. Hi, Roy.
Yeah, good morning. I just really wanted to say I'm not religious in any way, but I feel that with somebody like Justin Welby and some of his colleagues ought to be actually prosecuted for assisting offenders. This business has been going on in the church for years and years and years, and the people at the top of it just turn a blind eye to it, like the NHS did with Jimmy Savile. I mean, these people look after their own reputations, and yet these people are damaging young, innocent men, boys, children.
Do you think there's a case to answer there in law?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I certainly think, and there's a parallel to what Roy's saying with the Mohammed Al-Fayed thing in relation to Harrods, where some of the senior management were like helping take these young women from the shop floor up to his apartment. And, you know, there are investigations there, and there might be prosecutions, because, again, that was a powerful man at the top of an organisation, but lots of people who were senior knew about it. And this is the problem, where after something happens, people say, everybody knew. Everybody knew, and yet people were being damaged and nothing was done about it. I hope Justin Welby will actually meet some of the victims now and work out what he needs to do to really help them, so that he can really understand what it's meant to them and what role he could play with making them feel that at last their pain and their suffering from these criminal offences has been recognised.